Welcome back. It's Mr. Baumgarten here with my second video on the BBC Microbit. The idea of a conditional execution is to be able to pose a question in our program and have the program calculate the answer for us and then decide on the basis of that answer whether or not it's going to run some code for us. As always, we begin our Microbit programs with from Microbit. Import star. And I might want to ask a question. Display scroll. How are you? And I want to communicate to the Microbit whether I'm feeling happy or whether I'm feeling sad. And if I'm feeling happy, I'm going to press the button on the left. And if I'm feeling sad, I'm going to press the button on the right. So I want the happy emoji to appear if I press the left button, and I want the sad emoji to appear if I press the right button. So I can ask a question by saying if. And the Microbit has a couple of functions built in that let us see what's going on with these buttons. And it's simply button A and button B. As you can see, as I start typing, they appear for us. Just hit enter and it will autocomplete and give me the button A. And if I hit dot, we see that there's three different things that I can check. I can get the presses, I can ask, is it pressed or was it pressed? So I'm going to say, was it pressed? And now this is actually a function, so this is important. This is not complete at the moment. I need to put in a set of parentheses here, and it's only once I actually start typing them that Moo will actually give me the hint that I actually need them. So it's a little unfortunate in that regard. So there was pressed. To learn if button was pressed since the last time was pressed was called, and it returns true or false. And this is really the key of what we want when we're asking Python a question. We want the answer to that question to become either true or false. And so this will tell us if button A was pressed, it will say true, and if it wasn't pressed, it'll say false to Python. Now, every time I finish asking a question, in Python, I use the colon. So the colon is saying that the part before the colon should be able to be evaluated into a true or false answer. And you notice as soon as I hit the enter key after the colon, that instead of going to the beginning of the next line, I've actually been moved in a little bit. And this is because Python works on the basis of what's known as indentation. So here, if I write display show, and I'll put in my emoji for feeling happy, right, I now need to back arrow if I want to go back to this main part, back to the beginning of the line, but I want to keep this indented. And what this is saying to Python is all the code that I write that is indented after a colon, right, is the code that I would want to run if the part before the colon was true. So I only want to show the happy face if this was true, and so that's why that is indented. I also want to be able to press button B. All right, so if button B was pressed, display show image sad. And so what this will do, because this is indented after this colon, this code will run if this question is true. If it's false, it will skip all the lines that are indented and wait for something else that matches the indentation of where the original question was asked. So in this case, it'll skip to this if statement. And so it'll then ask this question, was button B pressed? And if it's true, it will display the sad image. And if it wasn't true, then it will end up down here where I've finished my program. So I can run check and flash. And once it's finished transferring up, the Microbit will ask the question, how are you? Now, if I don't do anything, it's actually going to stop at that point because neither button A was pressed nor button B was pressed. And so we see that it's actually just gone blank. And if I press the button now, nothing will happen. All right? But if I hit my reset button and let it run again, and this time, while it's asking the correct question, if I press the button on the left, it will give me the happy image. All right? It won't give me the sad image anymore. But now if I press the reset button again, and now this time I press this button, when it's finished asking the question, I'll get the sad face. What if I change my mood and I want to be able to keep going? I want to be able to press this multiple times and have it change what it's showing on the basis of how I'm feeling at a particular moment in time. I want it to keep on running and running and running. And that's where we're going to use the while statement. While statement says I want to keep on running a piece of code. And so I can use this feature of indentation and asking questions again. And remember that this is happening. This happens here when the question before the colon was true. Right. The same thing happens with the while statement. So I'm going to insert a line here and say while true. And because I'm saying it is true, it's always going to be true, so it's always going to happen. But again, it's, as far as Python is concerned, I'm asking it a question, and it just so happens that it's always going to be true, which means it'll always be yes and always happen. The part that I want to happen inside this while loop is defined by what is indented after a colon. And at the moment, I have not indented anything here. I actually want all of this to happen continuously. So I'm going to highlight all of these lines and hit my little tab button and push them all in one level of indentation. And so while this is true, I want everything that's at this extra level of indentation to happen. And what Python will do is it'll run this line, and if that equates to true, it'll run this, and then it'll run this line, and if that equates to true, it'll run this, and then it's reached the end of that indentation, and so it'll come back up to the while and ask the question, is this true? Well, yes, it is. And so it'll run through it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. You'll remember last time I said that Python works from top to bottom unless we specify otherwise. Well, this is one of those cases where we are specifying otherwise. We want to loop on this level of indentation. And in here, this doesn't have to be true. If I only wanted the happy face and I didn't want the sad face, I could say, while button B hasn't been pressed, or something like that. And so then I could use button B to exit out of the program. Because maybe once I'm sad, I'll never get happy again. That's a rather depressing thought. But let's run this and see what it does. Let's first of all click check. Well done, no problems here. Save, flash. So this time, how are you? All right. So if I press button A, I'll get a happy face. If I press button B, I'll get a sad face. And I can keep flicking between the two. Our second little program, we're going to use the built-in gyroscope just to find out how level our microbit is. And I want to know, is it flat or is one side higher than the other side? And let's use our microbit to tell us about that. I'll come in here into my code and let's create a new program for this one, shall we? So from Microbit, import star. So if I want to use the button to end the program, so while not button A was pressed. So while button A has never been pressed, keep doing this loop. And then as soon as I do press it, it'll exit. And we can even put in scroll. Let's put in by to prove that that works. All right. So, but in here we're going to have the indentation part for what I want to run until I press the button A. And to use the accelerometer, it's actually remarkably easy. If accelerometer, and it already appears for me, hit the enter key, dot. These are the different things we can get from the accelerometer. We've got our x-axes, our y-axes, our z-axes, and some gestures and values and things. And then we'll get to each of those in good time. For today, we're just going to use get x. And 40, 50 is probably around about the number that we want. So if the get x is bigger than 50, let's show on the screen the greater than symbol. Okay, and if the accelerometer get x is, say, smaller than negative 50, let's show the less than symbol. Check our code, save, let's give this lesson to a name and hit flash. What I haven't done is ask the program to actually show something on the screen, so I don't know when it's running, except for when that has finished. Okay, and look at that. So if it's this way orientated, all right, the greater than symbol will show me that this is the higher end, and it's pointing down towards the ground. And if I rotate it along, all right, when it hits the other way, the arrow is pointing down to the ground. And if I hit button A, it'll say bye. And then nothing else will appear on screen. All right, because button A was being used to determine how often I want to keep going through this loop. And as soon as this part here, this question, the answer was true, then it stopped processing whatever was indented after the colon and came back to whatever code was at the same level of indentation as the original question, which in this case was no indentation, and so display.scroll by is what it ran. Very nice. Except what happens if I've got it flat? I might want to tell if I've got it perfectly level. And at the moment, my program only tells me if I've got one side displayed versus the other side displayed. So there's a couple of different ways to do this, but the way I'm going to show you is to combine all of our questions into one kind of overarching question. Right? If my x-axis is bigger than 50, well then this is never going to be true. It's not going to be less than negative 50 as well as being greater than positive 50, is it? So I can link these two questions together by using what's known as an elif, which is an abbreviation for the phrase else if. So let's look at this. If the accelerometer is bigger than 50, run this code. Else, if the accelerometer is less than minus 50, run this. Else, display.show, let's just use a hyphen. And so this question says if none of the above have been true yet, then this is the one I want to run. So this is like a way of programming in like a last case scenario. If nothing else has ever happened, none of these things have been true, then this is the one that shows what I want. And we will only get to this, right, if our x-axis is less than 50 and bigger than minus 50. Okay, so that side's pointing down to the ground, that side's pointing down to the ground, and if I balance it just right, I get my minus sign, or my hyphen. So I can use that to tell if I've got something nice and flat. And our accelerometer also works exactly the same for the y-axis. The y-axis is used for the tilt. So that's enough with the microbit for lesson 2. We've got the accelerometer happening and we've got buttons happening. This is Mr. Baumgarten signing off.